I noted on Tuesday you mentioned 1.8 million had gone back to the general fund. That's as a result of justice reinvestment.
Justice reinvestment is a significant part of that. There's also some things that that we did internally in managing our beds a little differently, to where, for instance, at the Idaho Maximum Security Institution, we're 100 segregation beds less than we were a year ago. And so a segregation bed is a one-person cell where those inmates are locked up 23 hours a day. And because of very good leadership and good management at the Idaho Maximum Security Institution, we've been able to reduce our segregation cells by 100 beds. And those cells today now have 2 inmates in there, but those inmates are able to get out into the ball field more and get out and do other things because they're not in segregation. Those types of things allow us to save taxpayer dollars, frankly. And we've also made a couple other decisions based on programming and things like that that have allowed us to do that.
Outside of taxpayer dollars, how does that benefit your inmates to have them not in a cell for 23 hours a day?
It's a significant benefit to our inmates. We are in the process, matter of fact, we just started it in January. We're calling it restrictive housing reform. Restrictive housing is commonly referred to as solitary confinement, those types of things. And our goal, our overall goal, is to reduce the need to have segregation cells. Now, we're always going to have some seg cells. Inmates that pose a threat to other inmates, pose a threat to staff, we're going to lock up. But for behavioral type things, segregation doesn't work. It doesn't work to lock someone up because they broke a rule here in the prison. We've got to find other meaningful ways to hold inmates accountable. Before we had the 90 and 180 sanction piece, when a parolee would get arrested, he or she would wind up sitting in the county jail for maybe a couple months, and then they would ultimately be brought out here to the Idaho State Correctional Institution, and they could be in a cell here for 6 months. So with that 90 and 180, when a parolee violates their parole on a technical violation or something like that, that parole officer can make an arrest, put them in a county jail to up to 90 days. Some days it might be 10 days, in some other cases it might be 40. And then they'll come back on parole, and hopefully that serves as a wake-up call to them to get them back being compliant.
You used the word parole, the 90 to 180 day sanction. Would that be considered a violation of their parole, or is it just the sanction that's in place because it's a technical violation?
Yeah, great question. It's considered a sanction. Okay. Yep. So when they do that, if they they do something stupid out there on parole or whatnot, then our parole officers have the ability to arrest them, of course, and that sanction is that up to 90 days or up to 180 days.
Would that be credit for time served if they did get sent back?
Yeah, yep. They'll get
a 15-year sentence.
Yep, they'll get credit for that, and every day they do in jail or whatnot. Now that said, our parole commission has, I think, a policy that if an offender commits a new crime, commits a felony out there while on parole, even if they've been out on parole for 2 years, when they go back in front of that parole commission, the parole commissioners have the ability to take away all of that time while they spent on parole. And I think they do that because they're trying to incentivize offenders to not commit new crimes when they get out on parole.
Has it worked?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a great question. Not sure if that has worked. Not sure if it is a deterrent, to live a crime-free life. But I don't want to speak for the parole commissioners, but they might have some thought to that. It doesn't feel right to give that offender, credit for time served, if you will, while they were out on parole and not following the rules like they should have been. Like all of our out-of-state inmates today are housed at Colorado right now. We used to, back in the day, we used to have inmates that were in Oklahoma and other Minnesota, for instance, but the only out-of-state inmates that we have today are in Colorado, and they'll all be back in the next 2 weeks.
Is it more expensive or less expensive to house them at a Colorado facility, which you obviously must have some kind of contract with, than it is to have them at an Idaho facility, or does it depend on the inmate? It
depends on a lot of different things. I probably couldn't tell you the expense piece of it right now. Simply, I just don't know. I don't know if it's more expensive, less expensive, but I know that certainly towards a correctional best practice, it's better to have them closer to their resources, closer to their family, in the same state where they're likely going to parole. Those types of things are much better for us. It also significantly cuts down on our staff having to go out of state on a very regular basis and monitoring what's happening over there in an out-of-state prison. So all of those things are very good for us. Yeah, we have staff that whenever we have inmates that are housed out of state, we have a contract monitoring staff. It's a team that will spend, in Colorado, I think they were there, I want to say 2 or 3 times a month, where they'll go and spend, in most cases, 2 or 3 days each visit. And all they do is monitor that contract. They make sure that contractor is doing what it is they signed up to do. They make sure that our inmates are getting the things that they need, all of those types of things. And so it's a pretty significant effort to make sure that all of those things are going exactly the way they should be going. I just think, I just think overall, our Department of Corrections in Idaho right now is experiencing a lot of success. I think we collectively have taken a step in the right direction to be a lot more transparent. Even today, I mean, you're going to be spending the day with me. You don't see an entourage with me. You don't see a public information officer with me that's standing behind you telling me, "Hey, don't say that." We want to be raw. We want to be honest, and because we know the more we can get outside eyes looking at what we're doing, you and many others will see just how amazing our staff are. Like, we have amazing staff in this agency. You're also going to see offenders, believe it or not, inmates, probationers, parolees, that actually work really hard. Yep, we have some knuckleheads that don't want to, but by and large, our inmate population that you'll see today, they're working hard at overcoming addictions and all of those types of things. And then the third thing we know that you're going to see, and most people will see, you'll see things that don't make sense to you. You'll see things that maybe look broke or need fixed. And that's our responsibility as leaders, to be open to that criticism, open to suggestions to change, those types of things. So I think we're experiencing a lot of success this year as a department. It's pretty exciting.
The rate of recidivism, you mentioned property crimes and, was it drug crimes?
Yeah.
You've seen more?
Yeah. So across the board, across the country, I know there's a big push to not have beds taken up by a property or drug crime offender, and I subscribe to that as well. I would rather have my tax dollars go towards making sure that dangerous inmates are locked up here. But with that, having property and drug crime offenders in the community on probation or parole, I was just pointing out to that committee, I don't want them to be shocked that recidivism rates will actually increase with having property and drug crime offenders out there, because they're our highest recidivists. I mean, they are, someone with a drug addiction that's out there, it's very difficult to keep them drug-free, and it requires a whole bunch of work by probation and parole officers and taking, urinalysis testing and all of those types of things. And so, we are unfortunately going to experience some relapse. We're going to experience some recidivism because we have more property and drug crime offenders on probation and parole.
The sanctions that are in place, has that, I guess, then benefited
You bet.
The department in not having to send those people back every time they have a dirty UA?
Yeah, that's right. I think they have significantly helped. I know there's some that believe that Idaho is our judges are really tough on crime and things like that, and they absolutely are. But having come up our system, our judges, I think, do a really good job. They will give, if that particular person is not considered to be a public safety risk, our judges will give drug offenders, frankly, chance after chance after chance. And in some cases, they'll be before that judge, and that judge will just say, "Oh my gracious, okay, enough. That's it. I've given you all the chances you're going to get. You're going to go to the big house for a couple years." But I don't. It's not true that the belief that you get caught with a bag of marijuana and a judge is going to sentence you to 3 to 5 years. That's not happening. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to show me any factual incident where that's actually happening.